Hello, dear aspirants. Today we'll be taking up the next topic, that is active and passive voice. Okay, so basically, what is a voice? Voice is actually a term that it is used to denote the form of the verb. Okay, which shows if the subject that is there in the sentence. Now we know that in a sentence we have a subject and an object, right? So the voice shows that the subject in a given sentence, whether it is the doer, it is performing an act, or whether it is on the receiving side, means whether it is the receiving of that action, receiver of that action. Fine. That is what we call voice. And this voice of a verb, it actually, it describes, you can say, the relationship between the action and the subject or the object that is there in a sentence. Now, I'll take up. Now, we basically can categorize this voice into two. One is the active voice, and the other is the passive voice. Okay. Now, what is active voice? Now, as the name suggests, active. So, this active voice, it denotes that the subject, now it could be either a noun, maybe some name, or a pronoun, I, he, whatsoever. So this active voice in a sentence, it actually denotes that the noun or pronoun or the subject that is there in the sentence, it is the doer of that action, means it is performing the action. That is, the subject is performing the action on, or it is, you can say it is acting upon the verb. Okay, so this active voice, it actually has a very clear tone, a very direct tone. Okay, we use it when we want the reader, or you can say that when we wish to draw the attention of the reader towards the subject rather than the object. Okay, so when we wish to draw the reader to focus on the subject of a particular sentence and the action that the subject is performing. Okay, that is where we make use of this active voice. Okay, so this active voice, it performs an action. We can understand this with the help of an example. Now, for example, Ram helps Ravi. Okay, so the subject here is Ram. Okay, now he is performing an action on Ravi. That is, he is trying to help Ravi, or he is helping Ravi for that matter. Okay, so we have this verb, and the receiver of the act is Ravi over here. So that is what we can observe, that the subject is performing the action on the target. And the target here is Ravi. So this is a very simple, or you can say a very direct kind of an example of an active voice. Let's take one more example. The dog is chasing the ball, right? So in this sentence as well, what do we find? The subject is the dog. He is the doer of the action. Okay, he is chasing the ball. So the ball is at the receiving side. Okay, or you can say the object in the sentence. Now, to the contrary, when we come to the passive voice, this voice actually represents that the subject is one that is acted upon by the action or verb in the sentence. Or you can also say that the voice, it indicates that the subject in the sentence is no longer active, but it is passive. Okay, means we can say that the subject and the target, they flip places. Okay, and the focus in a passive voice, it shifts from the subject to the target, who now has become, or who now has, you can say, has taken the place of the subject. So the same sentence that we had taken in active voice, Ram helps Ravi, we can see that Ravi is helped by Ram. So the target or the receiver was Ravi, who has changed place with the subject, and it comes over here. Ravi is helped by Ram. So now where does our focus go? Obviously, it goes on the Ravi, on this name Ravi, rather than Ram. Means our focus is that what is being done to Ravi? He is being helped by Ram. Similarly, the next example, okay, the ball is being chased by the dog. Okay, now this is again passive. So earlier the dog was a subject, now it has come to the passive side. Okay, and where does the focus of the reader lie? It lies on the ball. Okay, so in this passive voice, the action's target, which is ball, it is positioned first. As I mentioned that the positions get flipped, okay, they interchange. So the object becomes the subject, it takes the place of the subject, and the subject takes the place of the object. So the sentence gets flipped and the subject is now being acted upon by the verb. Okay, in other words, what has happened? The subject has become passive, means the subject that earlier was the dog in that sentence, now it is on the passive side. Okay, so our focus has shifted from the dog to what is happening to the ball, right? So our focus, our target is when the verb acts upon the subject. Now, when should you use active or passive voice? That is again a question to be, to be focused upon. Now, we use the active voice in any sentence that focuses on the doer of the action. Means whenever we want to focus on the subject or the person who is performing the task, we make use of active voice, or we should make use of active voice. Whereas the passive voice, it is meant for sentences where you need to emphasize, okay, that the target of an action or the action itself rather than who or what is performing the verb. Okay, means when the focus shifts on the person who was the receiving side, he takes the position of the subject. We can say that it is a passive voice. Now, we can take some examples of active and passive voice to make the point more clear. Now, before that, I would like to share that at times what happens when we are not sure about that, when we talk that when should we use active or passive voice. Okay, say when there may be situations like when we are not sure about the person as to who is the subject. Okay, we can make use of the passive voice. Okay, now let's look at these examples. Okay, Twinkle likes adventure stories. Now we have the subject over here, okay, and this is the target. Okay, now when we move from active to passive, what happens? The place of the subject has been taken by adventure stories. So the idea is to draw the attention of the reader towards this as a subject, and that adventure stories are liked by Twinkle. So the focus obviously shifts more towards the word that comes first, means that what is the subject. Okay, so there is a flip of places and we find that adventure stories take the driving seat, you can say. Similarly, look at this one. Lata is learning French this year. Okay, so Lata is the doer of the action here. She is the subject. Okay, and French is the object, or you can say the receiving side. Now, when we flip or when we convert to passive voice, what do we find? That French is being learned by Lata this year. Okay, so again, our focus shifts from Lata to French when we move from active to passive, right? Then look at this example. Siddharth played cricket. Cricket was played by Siddharth. The same thing again, as I mentioned, that the focus of the reader, it keeps shifting. They were making invitation cards. Invitation cards were being made by them. Okay. Similarly, we have 2 or 3 more sentences. Okay, that will give you an idea about how the subject and the object, how they interchange places, how they flip, and what happens, how the focus of the reader shifts from the subject to the receiver. Okay, like Becky had packed the bags. Okay, so the bags had been packed by Becky. Similarly, Mira will buy the refreshments for the party. The refreshments for the party will be bought by Mira. So the focus automatically shifts towards refreshments rather than Mira. So this is, I mean, through these examples, we can get a clear-cut idea about how the active voice and the passive voice, okay, they work. Now see, we all read some reports, we listen to reports. Now news reports, say when you are talking about some incidents of crime or incidents that are usually, you would find that they are written in the passive voice. Why? Because things are unsure over there. Let's take this example. Cash was stolen from the register. Okay. Now, why it has been mentioned in the passive voice, there is a reason behind it. Why? Because it is unknown, okay, as to who has performed the act. So the doer of the act is missing, or you can say we are not sure about the doer. So we prefer to make use of the passive voice when we are reporting such incidents. So in these kind of reports, okay, the passive voice is used to emphasize the action that occurred rather than the person or rather than the individual who committed the act. There could be a reason for the same, that either the person is missing, we are not sure who has committed the act, or maybe even the person whom we are accusing of something, okay, he hasn't been found guilty of that act. So whenever there is a situation like this, one should use the passive voice, and that is what you would always find. Uh, Next time when you go through any report or you're reading the newspaper or you're reading any such news, focus on the voice that is being used. You would find that where things are uncertain, okay, or where the subject is unknown, you would find the report in the passive form rather than in the active form. Let's take one more example. The governor was inaugurated at the State House. Okay, the simple meaning of the sentence is that someone must have been appointed as a governor, and it was his first day in the State House or at his office. Now, the point is why it has been used in the passive form, because who did the inaugural part or who welcomed him? Okay, that again as a subject is missing. It is implied that the staff of that State House, that staff must have welcomed that governor. Okay, so the governor was inaugurated at the State House. So whenever we have such situations where certain things don't matter, or you can say they are irrelevant, okay, or you can say that they are implied, we make use of passive voice. Okay, rather we should make use of passive voice. And whenever we have to make a clear and direct statement, in such a scenario, active voice is used. Okay. Now, there are certain rules for converting active voice and passive voice. When converting the active voice into the passive voice or vice versa, okay, three things happen. One is that there is a flip of the subject and the object that we have discussed already. Apart from that, there is a change in the tenses and the pronouns that are being used in the sentence. Okay, I have a table with me over here. Let's have a look at this. From the point of view of tenses, let us have a look at the rule of conversion from active and passive voice. Okay, talking about the present tense, let's talk of this simple tense. The active sentence is Brendan plays cricket. Now, when we are changing this active voice into the passive one, what do we say? Cricket is played by Brendan. This is your simple present tense. Okay. Moving to the continuous tense, this is how the tense changes. Then moving towards the continuous tense. Okay. Again, the present continuous tense, Brendan is playing cricket. The ing form of the verb is used. Similar ing form will be used, but in a passive form, in a passive manner, like cricket is being played by Brendan. Okay. So this is how we change from active to passive, talking in the context of the present tense, present continuous tense. Then we come to the perfect tense. Okay, the present perfect tense. Brendan has played cricket, right? When we change it into passive, what do we find? Cricket has been played by Brendan. The tense would remain the same. Okay, what do we find? The focus now lies on cricket, fine, and it has been played by Brendan. So there is a change of tense. Okay, or you can say in all these sentences, you find one word as common, that is by. Okay, cricket is played by Brendan, cricket is being played by, cricket has been played by. Okay, you would generally find this word by being used in the passive sentence. Okay, in a passive form. Now we don't have any passive voice for a perfect continuous tense like Brendan has been playing cricket. We cannot make a passive of the same. Okay, then let's move to the past tense. Again, the simple past tense, look at the active part. Brendan played cricket, okay, and the passive was cricket was played by Brendan. Moving towards the past continuous, okay, Brendan was playing cricket, cricket was being played by Brendan. This is how we change it into passive. And when we come to the perfect past perfect tense, Brendan had played cricket, cricket had been played by Brendan. Again, we cannot make a passive of this form. Okay. Similarly, let's move to the future tense. Now, when we talk of the future tense, again, Brendan will play cricket. Okay, this is the active. It's a very direct sentence. Okay, the focus lies on what Brendan is going to do. He is the doer of the act, okay, of playing cricket. And the passive form, what do we see? Cricket will be played by Brendan. Okay, so this remains your simple future tense. Then Brendan will be playing cricket. Do you think we can make use of any passive voice over here? No. So this remains the same. We cannot make a passive of this future continuous tense. Then we come to your future perfect tense. Okay, Brendan will have played cricket. We find cricket will have been played by Brendan. And then again, we have no passive for this category of perfect continuous tense. Right? So these are the rules that we follow in tenses. We'll take them up in more detail in further classes. Then also, the next thing that we have to make, we have to keep in mind when we are converting from active to passive or vice versa, that there is also a change of pronouns. Like when we are using active voice, we make use of I. I have done this job. Okay. What do I use when we say when we convert it into a passive voice? This job has been done by me. Okay. We. Similarly, this we, it changes into us. Okay. We prepared this dish. This dish was prepared by us. Okay. This is how we will convert from active to passive. The pronoun we would change to us. He. Okay. He has done this act. What happens when we convert into passive? This act has been done by him, right? Similarly for she, and then we make use of they. Okay. They becomes them and she becomes her when we are changing from your passive active to the passive form. Okay. Or vice versa. If we are converting from passive to active, we will make use of these pronouns. So we find that there is a change of interchange of the places of the position of the subject and the object, means the target, the receiver. Then there is a change in the tenses, and also there is a change in the pronouns, the use of pronouns that we make use of when we are converting from active to passive. Okay, now let's look at these examples. Now these are some exercises that we can just go through and try. Now we completed the assignment on time. What should be the answer to this when you make it into a passive voice? The assignment was completed by us on time, right? Then a gift was given to Manisha by me. Now this has to be changed into active voice. Okay, I gave Manisha a gift. Okay, so me becomes I. The police caught the thief. What if we are changing it into passive voice? Okay, so the focus has to come on the thief. The thief was caught by the police. Okay, now remember the same situation as I had discussed earlier, that the thief may have been caught, but he is accused, not yet proved guilty. Perhaps the reporting should be done in the passive voice. So any such reporting, if you would notice, when you go through some reports, you would find that there is a use of passive voice generally. Okay. A mouse was being chased by my cat. Can change it into active voice. Okay, that my cat was chasing the mouse or a mouse. Now, Naveen loves Priya. What if we change into the passive voice? Okay, Priya is loved by Naveen. Okay, I hope you are able to solve these sentences alongside. Okay, this is just an assistance from my side to see, just to assist you in solving these sentences. Then the decorations for the annual day will be done by Emma. This needs to be changed into active voice. So what do we say? Emma will be doing the decorations for the annual day. Okay? J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter novels. Now let's change it into passive voice. What happens? Harry Potter novels were written by J.K. Rowling. Okay. Miss Henry will teach Spanish this year. If we change this into passive voice, what do we find? That Spanish will be taught this year by Miss Henry. So there is a change of the subject and the object. Focus now comes on Spanish, and there is also the change of tenses over here. And this is how it continues. So when we move to the concluding side of this topic, okay, this is just for your idea that these two are basically the two grammatical voices that we make use of in English. Okay, so why do they hold importance? Because the use of active or passive voice in any passage, that in itself will be indicative of what the author or the writer is trying to say. Okay, so each is suited to different types of writings. So when we are reading a passage, when we are reading a paragraph, the use of the active or passive voice would indicate where does the writer wish to draw the attention of the reader, whether he wants the reader to focus on the subject, whether he wants the reader to focus on the target, or what does he want how does he want the reader to interpret or infer the information that he is giving. Okay, so similarly, as I mentioned, when you look at the news anchors, okay, they often speak with the using the passive voice, whereas when you see authors, what do authors do? They at times generally write in the active voice. Okay, because they are writing something very straightforward. Okay, so what do we find? That the passive voice, it has a very subtle tone as compared to the active voice. Sometimes, your writing, it needs this tone, like when you want the reader to focus on the action being described, as I mentioned, okay, or the action's target rather than on who or what is performing. So when the focus has to lie on the target rather than who is performing the task, we make use of passive voice. Okay. So for most of the writings that we do, generally, you can say that active voice is more effective. It's an effective way to communicate your ideas or some facts or themes that you are trying to express. But in certain kind of writings, the use of passive voice becomes necessary, as the kind of examples that I had discussed with you earlier. So the most important is that the active voice, it is clearer and more direct, okay, while the passive voice is subtler and one can feel more detached. So that is all for this topic. And then we have the solutions for the questions that we had discussed. So whenever you view this video and you go through the exercise, you can even cross-check your answers as to were you able to arrive at the right answers or not. Okay, so that is all for this session. In the next session, we will be taking up some reading techniques or comprehension passages. So that is all for today. Have a good day. Thank you.